it probably would have been a little more controllable had there been good leadership in office. And Russia was, I mean, almost certainly avoidable with the Russia-Ukraine thing. Like, it should not still be going on. There could have been peace at this point. And anyway, that was a major failure. And some of the warmongering and sending money and weapons to Taiwan as if they're, approving of a war there. Some of the troop movements, I think they thought they were going to win this election, and yeah, it looked like they were planning for more. So I think a lot of people that didn't want their kids to go off and die in a war freaked out, and Kamala failed to create a separation from what I think the American population felt was a failed presidency. When people are looking for a leader, they want somebody that's going to make them safe. They want somebody that's going to give them, the opportunity to have life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Biden failed to do that. Harris probably could have come out, and I think she might have actually had a much better chance. Maybe not won, because that was a landslide victory Trump had. But I think what she could have done is she could have come out and said, Biden overplayed his hand. A woman would have better estimated what could and could not happen, and might have realized they may lose, full control. Like Biden started with, the super ticket. He had the Senate, the House, and the presidency when he started, and he didn't, I guess, factor that he might lose that, right? And he did. He lost that 2 years into where it was divided government, and he wasn't able to continue running some of the radical things he did. Had Harris come out and said, I'm going to be different, here's how, I disagreed with all this, the vice president doesn't have a lot of power, I'm really there to replace him in case anything goes wrong, and I disagreed with a lot of things, she would have had a chance. The other thing is, I think she was kind of a failed candidate because she didn't put out good policies. I mean, that whole tax the rich thing, it's getting old, and while I think there's some relevance and everybody needs to pay their fair share, the rich do pay a large majority of the taxes. And when you're saying, I'm going to tax unrealized gains, even your biggest donors, like when Mark Cuban comes out and says, I don't know why she's saying that, I think it's BS, and if she ever did that, she would immediately lose my support. But she didn't walk it back. And so, taxing unrealized gains would be an immediate recession. It would be the end of our economy as we know it. It would just, that's not even a rational conversation. That's stupid. The other thing she was saying with, I'm going to give 25 grand to every potential homeowner that wants to buy a home, that would have been highly inflationary. And while I think it's the right move to figure out a way to, invest in the housing market, which is significantly stalled right now, that may not be the way to do it, or at least not the only way. And she didn't go into it enough for people to get a warm, fuzzy feeling of comfort. The other big loss that I think Harris really failed with is she talked about creating a tax credit, a $50,000 tax credit for new startups. Well, just, as an economist, guys, like in America, you have 35 million small businesses, and anywhere between 40 and 60% of them, depending on what you read and who you're consuming content from, are not doing well. They're break even, they're struggling, they're having to do layoffs. And, if you're going to go out and you're going to give tax credits to new startups, then you're basically saying, hey, all of you guys that already took risks, all you Americans that already created 50% of the jobs that make up our society, we're going to create competition for you, and you know how you're already struggling? We're going to put you the rest of the way out of business. That's just not, it doesn't encourage people, especially when the labor market has been struggling. I mean, we just saw a 12,000 person jobs report last week, and I think the Bureau of Labor Statistics data has been questionable at best, and maybe at worst fraudulent for the last few years. Nobody looks at the revisions. I mean, we revised, I think August down to like 70, 80,000 people. Nobody looked at that. But now we have 12,000, and that's only, even though you lost manufacturing jobs, you only have the 12,000 positive number because we're adding more government jobs. Well, government jobs, guys, they're not a tax benefit. They're a tax cost. Like, you lose money on government employees if you're the government. Like, you have to pay the whole payroll. You might get some back as a rebate in taxes, but what you really need is strong private sector jobs to pay taxes so you can pay your bills. And when you're running a deficit of trillions of dollars, and then you're basically all of the hiring, or more than all of the hiring, that's going to cause labor issues. It's going to cause, what will probably almost certainly result in a recession of some sort. I mean, so what happened? America spoke up. America said, we're done. The Harris campaign was thrown out. On the long term, That's probably a really good thing because the right wing, the Republicans, they moved more to the middle and they captured the interest of Americans. Okay, I think the reason that this election saw so much early voting coming in for Donald Trump is that was Democrats in previous elections that had switched over because, not that they don't care about abortion or other Democrat policies, but they care more about being able to buy groceries. Okay, when you look at the cost of food and how much it's gone up, the cost of fuel and the fact that it's doubled, and the cost of housing, which I know the cost to build a house hasn't doubled, but if you add up the cost to build a house and then you also add up the increase in the interest rates, I mean, you're at over 100% inflation in housing, food, and fuel, energy, which is the main expenses of the American family. At a certain point, they're going to have to care about their lowest level needs, right? Well, in the long run, this is a very positive thing because the right has moved more to the middle, which is what the American people want. And the left, who had a tremendous amount of power 4 years ago, is going to have to rethink some of their ideas, move more towards the middle, move more towards what do Americans want, and look at, hey, how do we better serve our constituents, which is really what the point of a politician is to serve the people that voted for them, right? We give them power so they can benefit us, not so that they can go out and spend money like wild. I mean, I wouldn't even say a drunken sailor. They're drunken pirate ships full of sailors at this point. So if you have the right and the left slowly moving towards the middle to, try to maintain the love of the American people, because it's the only way they maintain power, in the long run, that's a positive. In the short run, what does that mean? In the short run, you have a Republican government, okay? And if all promises that Trump made to the middle class are honored, it might go well. Do we think all promises to the American government are going to be honored? I mean, heck, I don't know. I mean, I never want to underestimate the Elon Musks of the world. If he went in and actually did go in and figure out where's the waste in government and try to create some efficiency there, that would be a huge positive. I think there's a lot of very stupid laws that might have been relevant at one point or another. I mean, in Texas, and I might be misquoting this, so please don't hate me if I misquote it, but there's a law on the books that I was reading about, and this is years ago, so hopefully they've changed it. But if they haven't, it was funny when I read about it. There was a law that you could not shoot a buffalo from the second story of a hotel window, but you could shoot a Native American from the second story of a hotel window. Well, I mean, that might have been a very relevant law, a couple hundred years ago when there was an Indian tribe like riding around shooting the settlers because they didn't like that the settlers were settling on their land. But the fact is that law is immortal. It hasn't come off the books. It's still there. And some idiot might one day read it and think they can just go shoot a Native American from, obviously not. Like we know the court system would not allow it, but laws should not be immortal. Government programs should not be immortal. Everything should have some type of sunset on it where we at least go back and look at the value it's delivering. Things when they're conceived generally have a value. 100 years later, that value might have shifted, might have changed. And so I think Elon Musk can do something, but can he do it quickly? That's going to be the big test. The thing that I think a lot of people are wondering is, okay, well, what's going to happen with the markets? I think the stock market's going to go up until it doesn't. And what I mean by until it doesn't, the government has had to borrow tremendous amounts of money with all the deficits we've had. And at some point, there has to be a crash. There has to be a crash. Everybody says, watch what they say. I don't think we should watch what politicians say. I think we should watch what they do. And if we watch what they do and we go back years, they spend money, okay? You go back since the 1970s, these guys spend money. And they spend more money than crackheads do crack. And I wouldn't bet on a crackhead quitting crack, and I wouldn't bet on a politician quitting spending. And the only way for politicians to continue spending is for them to find a way to refinance their debt at a much lower interest rate. The only way to do that is to manufacture some type of crash in the American economy. So I think stocks, at least initially, are going to go up significantly because everybody's going to be bullish on tax cuts. Everybody's going to be bullish on, potentially easing regulations, which I know Harris said she would do, but I don't generally believe somebody from, California, where they love regulations, is going to turn around and deregulate anything, okay? So nobody actually, I think, expected her to do that. Trump might actually do that. So lower taxes, deregulation, getting people working, those are all positives for the market in the short term. I think some of the underlying issues might be too big, though, and those underlying issues are, one, we've had a tremendous amount of labor issues. We've lied about the labor data. I believe we are in a labor recession. I think they'll announce that labor recession started in October of last year. I think that you're starting to see it now because the bureaucrats knew the president was going to change. The bureaucrats are now trying to protect their jobs. So they're starting to show what's already been prevalent. But it's funny, if you go to the BLS, they'll add all these new jobs. If you dig deeper into the data, most of the jobs added are part-time jobs. Well, you can't say a part-time job is as valuable to an American worker as a full-time job. And if you look at the data, we haven't added a full-time net full-time job, like more than what we've lost, since early 2023. Okay? So in other words, we're losing more full-time jobs than we're adding. And when you look at the last BLS data of 12,000, you need 150,000 jobs just to keep up with inflation, or not, birth rate 18 years ago, okay? And that's not including what we have coming across the border, inflation, legal or illegal or otherwise. There's also a lot of questions on the real estate market, and I think everybody, and not everybody, but a lot of the folks that I talk to in the real estate market have been very bullish on Trump. They've been very excited about Trump. They, and frankly, I was excited to have a business guy back in. But I shocked and triggered a lot of my Republican friends by saying, Trump is not initially going to be better for single family housing. He's not initially going to be better for real estate. Like the tariffs that he's talking about imposing are going to cause the 10-year treasury to go through the roof. When I looked at it this morning, I think it was up 12, 15, 20 basis points. That's going to drive mortgage rates up. The way you look at mortgage rates is, add a few points, 2 to 2.5 points to that 10-year treasury, depending on what the arbitrage is, right? And so if you look at Trump coming in as, hey, this is going to be the end-all, be-all savior of real estate as we know it, no, it's probably not. Stocks, I think you're going to have a boom, and then sometime in the next 24 to 36 months, you're going to have a bust. They have to refinance their debt, and they need to manufacture a crash. That's whether you're Democrat or Republican. And the only way you're going to do that is, if I was Trump, I would do that sooner rather than later. I would say, hey, I took over Biden's economy. There's no way to hide this from you all. This is going to crash the economy. Let it fall. Let everybody know how he's going to fix it. Work on fixing it. Lower the interest rates. Drop the Fed. Make a huge pivot. The Fed is worried about labor. Our GDP numbers are high. Our BLS data has been amazing. If you look at how many times have we heard Biden say over the last 4 years, I created record jobs. Really it was just pandemic losses coming back, and he's not created jobs well at all, as we're seeing the revisions come into the data. But what should we expect in real estate? I think you're probably going to expect higher rates for at least the next 90 days and probably the next 6 months. I think somewhere between end of first quarter, middle of second quarter, and an economist's prediction is sort of like an astrologist's prediction on timelines. Please don't, use your own good common sense to figure stuff out. We know the government needs to refi, but as to when, who knows? And there's a lot of factors, geopolitical and otherwise. I think Trump will be good for stability of the world. I do think that even though he's not in power already, when you're the president-elect, you get certain briefing rights. So he's already starting to get information to get ready for the job. Based on how he negotiates, if you've ever read any of the books he's written or books written about him, he's already probably starting to pre-frame conversations and to set expectations with the Xi Jinpings, with the Kim Jong-uns, with the Vladimir Putins, with the Zelenskys on what he's expecting, because he's got to figure out a way to increase stability of trade. If he wants to, in my opinion, there's no way to avoid the recession, but if you can have the recession, blame it on your predecessor, and come out of it quickly because of good policy, then he can, with good policy, get out quicker. And the only way to do that is to have more trade, more tariffs, more taxation. And when I say more tariffs, it doesn't mean unreasonable tariffs. I don't think he actually wants to put a 60% tariff on China. I think he actually wants to renegotiate with China and get them to come off of what they're doing with BRICS. I think he wants to renegotiate with Russia and make them a trading bloc and bring back energy policy, globally, to lower energy costs, which would frankly be a little deflationary to the energy sector, but it would be incredible for the American consumer. So let's see. Stocks, they're going to go up initially because everybody's bullish on what policy will look like. And it does look like he has the House, the Senate, the Supreme Court, and the presidency. Real estate, I think we're going to continue in our stall. I do not think we're going to have a crash. The reason I don't think we're going to have a crash is we still have an incredible inventory shortage. There has not been enough inventory produced since 2008. Frankly, if you've watched my other content, you know that was a crash, once again, caused by the government. Bill Clinton repealed the Glass-Steagall Act. George Bush wasn't smart enough to figure out what that did. It deregulated banking and allowed for a lot of money printing, money spending, and frivolous lending, which, caused home buyers to buy stuff they couldn't afford, which caused the real estate crash of 2008. And since that time, builders who were the real people that suffered, the consumer and the builder, not the banks all got bailed out, have never built as much inventory as they used to build. So anyway, I'm giving you guys a lot on what I'm seeing. I don't think it's the end of the world. I do think there will be some rebellions. I saw some funny TikToks that they're boarding up Washington, D.C. Huh?
We have a question.
Yeah, perfect. I was just going to say, time for questions.
One is asking to comment on CDs and long-term CDs.
To comment on long-term CDs.
Interest rates going higher on CDs.
Yeah, so look, as the Fed drops rates, that's going to directly impact your CDs. If you're getting CDs right now, or you already had CDs before, it's going to be the best time to get a CD. Now, a CD ties up your money generally, unless you can get one of those. They used to have like risk-free CDs where you would do a CD, but you could get out of it at any point. And I think Bank of America had that. That was like back in, before '08, and it was like a 5% risk-free CD. And I put my money in there because there was no risk. Why not? But I don't think that CDs are great right now because unfortunately you have to tie up your money. I mean, when you have deposits at a bank, that's effectively what the bank loans out. Banks should pay you interest on a deposit. When you tell the bank, hey, I'm going to go ahead and put money in a CD account, which means I'm not going to pull money out of it, you're not liquid anymore. So your cash does not benefit you in the case that you have a crisis and you want to go use that cash to buy discount assets. And normally, when are discount assets sold? In an economic crisis. Okay? What do the political parties need if they're going to refinance all their debt and continue spending like the crackheads that they are? A crisis. Would there ever be a better time for a political party to spend money than one when they have the House, the Senate, the Supreme Court, and everyone else? No, like now is the best time for them to spend money, just like it was the best time for Biden to spend money in his first 2 years when he had all the power. So, I think it's not wise to put your cash into a CD right now, but I do think if CDs is your strategy, then the rates on CDs is probably going to go lower as the Fed drops rates. All right, great question, by the way. Other questions?
Would the tariffs actually be helpful?
So I think in the long run, the tariffs could be helpful. This is a real mixed bag, okay? And there's a lot of people putting fear out into the market on what can happen with tariffs. Tariffs, I saw some ad that, Trump wanted to put a sales tax on everybody when I was up in Massachusetts last week. And no, that's not the case. Tariffs are basically saying, hey, if you want to trade with us, you have some advantage, or maybe you're putting tariffs on our goods or something like that. So we're going to put an additional tax on your good to bring it into our country. Like now, if you think about it, like say there's a country like Mexico, like China, where they have cheaper labor and they can produce the same product an American worker can produce, but they can do it for far less. If the tariff is added to it, then that allows for American workers to be more competitive because effectively the government is generating revenue on that tariff. So that revenue they're generating on the tariff, if the government was efficient, they're not, but if they were efficient, could be something to replace an income tax or a corporate tax or something like that. Like what Trump is saying with the tariffs is that he would rather take money from other countries that are producing goods at an unfair advantage to our workers in order to get our companies to get more workers working in our country. And then our government would generate revenue from those tariffs, which would be lower taxes. That would mean he could lower taxes on us in other areas. Now, is that the way it'll play out? I don't know. Like, and these are all like, do you trust what they're going to do? Like, a lot of people don't trust Trump. A lot of people do trust Trump. Some people worship Trump at this point. I don't really necessarily have a dog in the fight. I think he was probably the best candidate if you're in business. You know, if for no other reason, like I'll tell you, I personally voted for Trump, but I don't love the idea of having an 82-year-old in office, and Trump guarantees that if he lives all 4 years, right? He's 78 years old. That didn't go well last time. We did not do well under Biden. If you think Biden was sentient when he started, nobody thinks that when he ended. Not even his own party. They wouldn't have ousted him and put Kamala Harris in if they thought he still had brain cells that were functioning and firing real. Okay? They weren't. So I don't like the idea of a 78-year-old getting elected, but I didn't have any confidence in Kamala Harris because she just seemed very puppet to me. She just seemed like she would say anything to get, you know, the vote. What's up? What's the next question?
Okay, this is kind of the same, but one, will interest rates go down soon? And two, can I raise my rates on my rental homes?
I would wait on raising rental rates. I think in the long run, interest rates are going to go down. Okay. The thing that's causing the rates to stay higher right now is the 10-year Treasury went up as a result of Trump getting elected. The 10-year Treasury and mortgage-backed securities are very comparable investments. It's the same investors that buy both of those things. So when that goes up, you generally add a couple points on there, and that's where you're going to get your mortgage rates. Banking rates will go down. So what a bank loans to a business at is going to go down as the Fed drops their rates. Okay, you're going to see the Fed rate drop, which will drop the Wall Street Journal rate, which will drop SOFR, which all those rates where the banks lend to businesses are going to go down. Unfortunately, mortgage rates to consumers follow inflation more than they do the actual Fed. So unless the Fed comes in and says, hey, we're going to buy up mortgage-backed securities, or hey, we're going to stop selling mortgage-backed securities and flooding the market and devaluing the market, then no, mortgage rates are not going to go down quickly because Trump's policy of pro-growth, tax cut, deregulate, is going to cause inflation, and the Treasury bond traders are trying to get ahead of it, which is why Treasury bond prices go up. So the answer to your question is no, mortgage rates will not go down, at least in the short run. Now, in the long run, almost certainly yes, okay, which is another reason why I think the government has to have a market crash in the next, I mean, I'd guess 12 months, but who knows?
Okay.
Next question. Good question, by the way. Whoever that was a great question.
Julia's asking, what should we be doing now to help our clients win in the next 60 days?
So if you're trying to help your clients, I'm assuming Julia's in real estate or insurance, is it? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. If you're trying to help your clients now, then you need to be showing them the benefit of the investment that the real estate is. Okay? We've been in a real estate stall for the last few years, frankly, since the Fed started raising rates in 2022, 21, 22. Sorry, guys, I'm not good on past dates, but since they started raising rates, you've seen buyers holding and waiting because that means the market is changing. We've seen real estate values on average, now I'm not talking about any specific market, but on average across the globe, or at least America, on average, the real estate values have trended up 5 to 7% every year. So if you look at what a buyer is going to spend on their rate right now, yeah, it's going to be higher. They're going to pay more to buy right now. But that higher rate is effectively getting them the best sales price they're going to get. Like, real estate's going to take off. It is a hard asset that has tax advantages, it has cash flow advantages, and I mean, it's a hard asset. And basically what that means is as inflation goes up, it goes up. So you get all three of the major investor wins, right? If I'm you, I'm saying, yeah, you're going to suck wind on your rate, and say you bought a $300,000 house, you're going to lose $9,000 this year on the rate because you're not or you're not financing it at one of those 3% interest rates, or you're financing it at 6 or 7, maybe you're going to lose 12 that you could have saved if you'd have bought in, say, 2019 or 2021, right? Now, when you look at what inflation's probably going to do on that real estate, if there's not a boom, okay, like after the crash, and there is almost always a boom after the crash, unless Real estate was the epicenter, which was '08. Real estate will not be the epicenter of this crash. It will be government spending, it will be inflation, it will be geopolitics, it could be AI. I mean, there's a lot of different bubbles out there. It's all which one pops, which black swan event. But it's not real estate, right? Real estate has stalled. We have not produced enough supply. That's why we never crashed. We just stalled. So if you show them that, hey, your real estate, say it's the same $300,000 house, is going to go up by 7%, you're going to gain $21,000 in equity on that house by buying today. So if you paid an additional 3%, okay, well, you're effectively paying 9,000 more to get 21,000 in gains. That's an amazing arbitrage, and that's only happening because, frankly, the industry is stalled. So your buyers are buying at the lowest price possible for what the real estate market in most markets around the country will be, and they should be buying right now just to get that real estate, because you marry the house, you date the rate. Like, once the market does crash in the next 12 months, 18 months, 6 months, 3 months, we don't know, but we know the government has to refinance their debt. The government cannot not refinance their debt. Well, that's not true. The government can decide not to refinance their debt, but if they do that, they have to balance the budget. So you make your bets. Oh, I bet the government's going to balance the budget, or I bet there's going to be a crash. I do not think Trump, being the opportunist that he is going to waste the opportunity to fix all the things that he thinks are broken with this country, which is going to require immediate investment and lots of government spending. So I think the likelihood of a crash, so that he can refinance all the debt, so he can continue spending like a crazy man, because he was a record spending president when he was in, is going to effectively, put you in a position where if you bought today and paid the shitty interest rate, you're going to have a better situation where you're able to refinance later at one of those 3, 4, 5% rates. Next question. Great question, by the way.
Another one said, should I buy as much real estate as possible now? And should I pay cash or get a loan on another rental home?
I do not like ever giving somebody direct advice on anything without knowing their full circumstance. Okay, like, I don't know what your tax planning is. I don't know what your capital position is. I don't know what your cash flow is. I don't know all the things that would be prudent to look at before giving you this advice. I will tell you what I'm doing. I am acquiring and holding as much real estate as I can as long as it cash flows. I won't do anything without cash flow. Cash flow is my guide. The days where cash is king, I think, are over. I think now, the Federal Reserve never changed. Okay, we've had the Federal Reserve since our government created, I think, back in 1905, if I remember. Well, we changed the dollar. We changed the dollar back in the 70s. We used to say cash is king before Nixon killed the dollar. When Nixon killed the dollar, when he removed the gold standard, we changed the dollar. So imagine making the dollar into a screw, but you're still using a hammer to put it in. Like, that has been, like, if you look at income disparity, since that time, like, it used to be if the rich went up, the poor went up. There was a certain social contract people can understand. Once Nixon removed gold from the dollar, you saw the rich do this. And it's a function of complexity in the market, and it's a function of complexity in understanding how the money system works. Effectively, what happened that day is cash is no longer king. The Dave Ramseys of the world that say pay everything off are wrong. Now the goal is have as much good debt as you can, asset-driven debt as you can, as long as it cash flows and you have enough exit strategies to get out of it safely in the case of a downturn that might affect you, right? Like, if you have access to non-recourse debt, that would be, I think, the opportune thing to look at. But if you're dealing with recourse debt, then, make sure you have significant cash flow. And yes, buy as many hard assets as you can, because there is no doubt more inflation is coming. Everybody that says inflation is transitory in a Keynesian economy, which we are a Keynesian economy, okay? Like, anybody with a fiat currency is Keynesian, and we have a fiat currency. Our currency is valued by nothing. There's no measure of value on that currency. So we're Keynesian. We target, 2% inflation? Why? So the government can keep spending more than they make. That's the whole reason we do that. Good question, by the way.
Thoughts on UMC and our 30 years of being taxed on it?
I don't like any taxes, and I think there are some very intelligent people that know how to make sure the system works for them, and I think if you don't like the way that that's going, you should definitely get out and vote.
And then a comment, Veronica Escobar needs to go.
I think I probably agree with that 100%. I think there should be term limits, and I think anybody who spends too much time in office needs to get out. We have term limits for presidents. We do not have term limits for congressmen or senators, and they go in there and they cede power, but I think they're also molding from the inside out. I think their brains are dying. I think they're getting indoctrinated more and more and more by their own BS. Whether it's right or left, I think poly means multiple and ticks means blood sucking arachnids, and you need to be a realist, and you need to have logic, and you need to think for yourself. And anybody who is in the swamp is going to come out smelling like what the swamp smells like. So there needs to be term limits, and that definitely applies to Escobar as well.
Another one is Ronaldo or Messi?
I don't know. I don't follow boxing. I think that's boxing. Maybe it's soccer for all I know.
Another one said price of gold. I was left a large inheritance. What should I do?
Don't go invest with the first person you talk to. If you were left a large inheritance, you need to go find somebody that can help you invest that well. You don't want to sit it in cash because cash is a deflationary asset, but you don't want to go into anything unsafe. You need to get around people that will protect you. There's actually an organization I think is one of the best. I do not get paid to advertise them, but they're called Do Wealth. Do Wealth. They run a virtual family office program. You can pay them anywhere between, I think it's a few grand a month or 10 or 15 grand a month, depending on your net worth. And they go in and they help you with tax planning. They help you with investing. They help you with managing lots of stuff. A lot of insurance brokers will say that, oh yeah, well we do this and we'll help you with this and we'll help you with that. And they have some of the skill sets, but they don't have the time because they're in the sales business. These guys are true fiduciaries. They make their monthly fee and they actually help. I would go find them or someone like them to help you. Now, regarding gold, gold is a hard asset. Gold is going to go up as people lose trust for the dollar, which invariably is going to happen because while I think Trump is in all probability going to be good for the economy over the 4 years, maybe a little bit of a struggle in the 1 or 2, I do not think you're going to change the culture of the American political system in time to fix us. I think you're probably going to have an incredibly large crash in the 2030s. And there's going to have to be some type of global reboot on how we borrow and spend money. There's going to have to be some new social contract made with the citizens of Earth because they're starting to lose faith in their politicians, not just in America. This is in all of the Western world. I mean, you've seen the CCP in China make radical pivots when they saw their citizens getting frustrated. So people are losing trust for politicians across the globe, and there's going to have to be some new shifts to the way money is spent, and that, let's just say we are the global elites in America. We really are. And I don't think that the 7.5 billion other people in the world are going to continue tolerating us if we keep acting like idiots, spending, causing wars, death everywhere all over the world. And I don't think we're going to convince our politicians not to fast enough. So there's some big crash coming in the next 10 to 20 years. Gold will be a good asset.
A comment is Kamala didn't lose that bad for not having policies.
Okay. I mean, yeah, I guess. But she lost. Like, why run a race if you're not trying to win? I just think whoever advised her on strategy must have been stupid. And I also think this was a big referendum on the media. Like, this was such an enormous beat that it blows my mind that the media was actually telling people, oh yeah, it's a close race. Oh, like that poll that came out a few days before the election, the Iowa poll saying, oh, Kamala's ahead. Obviously she wasn't. I mean, Trump won by a landslide on the national vote. Trump won by a landslide in early voting. Republicans have had landslide gains in voter registration. And, like I said before, I think that's a positive because it's going to bring, the Democrat Party closer to the middle because they're going to realize that, Democrats and Republicans both want power. But the power comes from the people. And if they have to come back to us to get that power, that's actually a good thing in the long run. But why would you run a race not to win? Like, I just think that's so dumb. She was a very poor candidate. And, a lot of people are probably going to hate that I'm saying that. I think it's inspirational that she was a woman running. But, I run several companies, and when I say I run them, I am in the investor, and I've got Viviana Ronquillo, Valerie Chavez Arandando. I've got women that I work with that run companies for me that are freaking brilliant, that could have amazing conversations, that would not be afraid to sit down on the Joe Rogan podcast. And if you're a political candidate and you are, like, you're a joke. If you can't sit down and have long form content for 3 hours, if you avoid media, like, I think the left needs to realize that you can't just gaslight. And the media needs to realize that Americans aren't stupid. And until they do that, they're going to continue losing market share. Any other questions or comments?
One more. What was the biggest turning point in your wealth?
I don't know that I've had a biggest turning point. I probably had lots of biggest turning points. I think, everybody's looking for an outcome. They're looking for an ending. I'm not. I'm looking for a process. I feel like building wealth, or frankly, working on your fitness or your spirituality or anything for that matter, it's like a staircase. Like, you're not looking to get to the top of the staircase necessarily any more than you're looking to make it to the next step. And at every step there's a lesson, and every lesson there's generally a problem that you have to solve. And so I don't know that I've ever had a biggest turning point. Well, and maybe paradoxically, the biggest turning point is figuring out how to figure out where I am, and then once I figure out where I am, identify the best way to solve the problem there. So hopefully that answers your question. All right, guys, I know we got to run. We got to start logging off. I've got another appointment coming in the next few minutes that we need to prep for. I hope this has added value. If it